guys, Jill here. Today I wanted to share with you a card that I did for the Altenew Inspiration Challenge for July 2016. The theme is weddings and this is the color palette. So I started with the Beautiful Day stamp set. I think this might be my favorite stamp set of theirs, at least at the moment. So I lined the stamps up that I was going to use in my Mini Misty. And I'm working on top of the Canson XL 140 pound cold press watercolor paper. And then I'm going to be stamping these images onto that paper with my VersaFine Onyx Black ink pad. And in a moment you're going to see why I'm using the Mini Misty. I just love the fact that you can keep restamping until you get the perfect impression. So I had a really hard time stamping the Y on Beautiful Day, and I ended up having to stamp it 3 times. Now, of course, you could accomplish this a different way with the stamp positioner, but I just find the Mini Misty to be really easy. So I clean everything off with my absorber cloth right away, and I find that if you don't let anything sit, then inks that would otherwise get permanent don't. They just wash right off with the absorber cloth, and I just use water on that. And then I'm putting my stamps right away, and then I'm going to get out the next 2 stamps that I want to use. Now, sorry about the cat parade. That's Caesar. He's pacing, and you're going to see him a bit more here because something about me filming just gets him moving. So I had made a mask, and Caesar walked across it. So that was wonderful. He also walks across the stamps. So I also have to wipe those off. But, so I set the stamps where I want them to on the mask. And the mask is also older masking paper, so it has lost its sticky, so I'll be retiring that mask. But I do hold it down with one of the magnets from the Misty, so it came in handy there. I'll be inking those 2 images up with the same VersaFine Onyx Black ink and stamping those down, and he's just being persistent. And I really just need 1 inking, but just to press a little bit harder in a few other spots. So there's that mask going into retirement. And I will wipe those stamps off and just set everything aside for the moment. So, sorry about my dirty rag over there, but it really is clean. I just used it with a lot of everything here in the stamp room. I have a few of them, and they've gotten a bit grimy, but I use those to rub my brushes off on when I have too much water on them. Okay, so this is a chalkboard that I picked up at the Dollar Tree, and I have those as well as some clipboards that I had my husband Joey take the actual clip off of. And I will tightly tape this down on all 4 sides, and that way I find that my paper just doesn't warp. So I find that to be a great trick that I saw. And so I'm going to zoom out in a minute here so we can get into the painting so you can see some of the mixing. Now, I went ahead and I got all 3 of the Prima Confections paints. So they are the Classics, Tropical, and Decadent Pies. And then what I did was I took all of the pans, or these are really half pans, and I put them in a logical order and broke it down into 2 different pans. Then I made color charts. I'm going to be working with just a few colors really. So I'm going to lay down a wash, mostly water and a little bit of that pink in the center, which I know to be 22. And I'm going to put down what's pretty light. Remember with watercolors, what you're seeing right now is not the color that it's going to end up as. So I already had some of that color up on the top of the palette there, so I'm bringing it down. Then I'm adding in some darker color, and then I'm washing my brush off and I'm actually pulling back some of that color. So that, again, I don't want to go in too dark. So I'm kind of, with this one, I do all different types of watercoloring. Sometimes I like smooth blends. Sometimes I like really extreme blends. I guess on this one, what I'm going for is not even really blend, I guess, when I say extreme blends. I'm going for the extreme where you can see from color to color. And there is some blend in there, but you can see from spot to spot. And so there is 3 distinct colors. There's the dark, the mid-tone, and the light. And there's, you know, variation in between, but that's the main parts. And then the little bits of the leaves that get turned over, those are your lightest. And that's what's going to divide your flower. And that's going to help provide some of the contrast. So I left those almost completely light. I could have added in some more variation, but I really wanted to leave those alone. I didn't want them to get a lot of color added into them. I really wanted that extreme, again, the variation. And that's kind of the look I was going for with this one. A lot of the times with watercolor, I do like to be a little bit more subtle, let the water and the color bleed out more. But again, that's not what I was going for with this. So see that middle layer really deep towards the center where the flower would be deeper. So I am adding a little bit of purple into that paint now. And I don't have them, or do I? I might have that. I think it's 20 is the purple I'm adding in. So just to give a little bit more of, say, a shadow there. So then coming into the center, that is 5. And I started out light. And then the green is 6 on the leaves. And I again came in light with the leaves. And I went for that variation where it drops back, not drops back, but you can see each level, almost like stairs. And I really like how that turned out. And I did that a little bit with the yellow, more on the teeny tiny little, which I think could kind of be little leaves, but I turned them into little flower buds up on the upper right hand corner. Now with the petals, what you saw me doing was jumping around. I worked from petal to petal because I don't want the petals to bleed into each other, and I find that's important when you're working with more variation. So just don't work with your petals next to each other unless you want them to bleed into each other. In that case, go ahead and work with them next to each other, just like you wouldn't work on the green leaf next to the pink petal. So just don't work on the leaves next to each other one at a time, and they'll stand out more against each other. Okay, so I'm coming back into the yellow again, and I'm going to add in some orange, and I don't believe I can see which orange. And these are colors I didn't have on my palette, so all I did was spray them and to activate them, and then I pulled them out onto my palette. So now I'm going to come into the background, and I'm using 11. And I'm just creating a nice light shadow. And I don't want it to be very heavy, and you'll see that in the final picture. But I do want a shadow because a shadow is created. Now I'm not going to show you the assembling of the card because that footage did get lost, but it's not anything difficult. I took some pearls and actually a few pink pearls, a few white pearls, and a few crystals actually from my stash, and I stuck those down with matte medium, and I added it to a piece of black shiny paper and added it to a card. But back to the background, and Caesar's back. With the gray, I just pretty much went around the whole image, being super careful not to touch any of that color to reactivate it, and add a little bit more into that bottom corner so that it had a little bit more shadow, a little bit more heaviness near the flower. But otherwise, it's a very, very light shadow. And the doubling up is mainly at that bottom there, because I'm thinking that that flower would have most of the weight with the shadow and very little in the front. And you know, just enough that you can see a little bit of that shadow there in the front. And adding a little bit more down at the bottom there. So I have a complete list of supplies listed below this video, as well as on my blog. And as always, I do appreciate you watching this video. And thanks for stopping by, and have a great day.